Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. So, welcome, one and all, to our exploration of Sri Isopanishad. And now we are on the 15th mantra this evening. A couple of housekeeping announcements. Tomorrow will be our last session. Like always, it'll be a half hour. And of course, I'll miss you all, but starting on May 5th, we're going to be resuming classes in partnership with Funky Om Yoga Studio in Huntington, New York, here on Long Island. And it'll be a 1 hour gathering from 7:30 to 8:30 on Tuesdays, starting May 5th. So you will be receiving an invitation to join that, and hope we'll be able to continue our get together and our time together then. Now, mantra 15, Isopanishad. Hiranmayena patrena, Hiranmayena patrena, Satyasya pihitam mukham, Satyasya pihitam mukham, Tattvam pushan apavranu, Tattvam pushan apavranu, Satya dharmaya drishtaye, Satya dharmaya drishtaye. Hiranmayena patrena, Hiranmayena patrena, Satyasya pihitam mukham, Satyasya pihitam mukham, Tattvam pushan apavranu, Tattvam pushan apavranu, Satya dharmaya drishtaye.
Satya dharmaya drishtaye.
Very good. We're going to skip the group recitation because we're doing two mantras this evening and tomorrow as well, the final two. Here are the synonyms for this 15th mantra. Hiranmayena, by a golden effulgence. Patrena, by a dazzling covering. Satyasya, of the supreme truth. Apihitam, covered. Mukham, the face. Tat, that covering. Tvam, yourself. Pushan, O sustainer. Apavranu, kindly remove. Satya, pure. Dharmaya, unto the devotee. And drishtaye, for exhibiting or for showing. Drishta, vision, to make visible, to exhibit for others to see. Translation of mantra 15. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Translation again. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Few points on the synonyms here, the word for word translation. Hiranmayena, by a golden effulgence. Hiranya is the Sanskrit word for gold. And if you're familiar at all with the story of the young sage Prahlad and the Nrsimha avatar, the half-man, half-lion avatar, you know that the evildoer in that story went by the name Hiranyakashipu. Kashipu means a soft bed. So this person's two interests in life were gold, Hiranya, and Kashipu, soft bed. So here we have the word Hiranmayena, by a golden effulgence. Patrena, by a dazzling covering. Like in English, we have the equivalence of patina, that dazzling shine on something. Is it called? It's called its patina. The word mukham, face. Now in slang, I don't know if it's used much anymore, but you used to call somebody who was head of something the mukh. Now I have no idea if that's from the original Sanskrit or not, but it means the face. Satya, now that's a word we should all be very familiar with now, pure. And dharmaya, unto the devotee. So a satya dharmaya would mean someone who has achieved such pure love for God that they have no material interests at all. They are known as a satya dharmaya, one who is at the height of a life of dharma. What I found fascinating about this verse, and before we go on, I do want to read to you the next verse, which I have not put up on the screen, so you'll just have to bear with me here. Translation to Mantra 16. O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind. So many different names and titles to make very, very clear who it is the speaker is addressing. Please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I. So again, as we discussed last time, the mantras are beginning to repeat, and we discussed how repetition is an absolutely effective and frequently used device in grammar for underscoring something of importance, for embedding it deeply, for good retention and memory, and to declare this as a significant point to be attended to. So here we also have in these two verses, mantras 15 and 16, this same idea of please let me see you. So there's something standing between us and a vision of the ultimate source of everything. And here is this devotee praying, please remove the confusion, remove that effulgence, that amorphous light that's standing between me and a vision of you as you are in your personal form. So there are three aspects. This is the crux of the discussion here this evening. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are three aspects of our understanding the Supreme Being. This comes from the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmiti paramatmiti Bhagavan iti shabhyate. Learned transcendentalists, Vedanti, those who know Vedanta, who know the absolute truth, say that it is non-dual knowledge, jnanam advayam, and is called impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead. So here are these three dimensions of perceiving the Supreme Being. Brahman is the place of knowledge. You know that the soul, the Atma, the individual Atma, is described as sharing Krishna's qualities in minute quantity. So the qualities of the Atma are Satchit Ananda, Satful knowledge, Chitful self-awareness, Ananda joyful, blissful. In Brahman realization, there is a realization of that knowledge dimension of the Supreme. Realizing that all energy is divine is an inspiration to recognizing I am a part of that divine creation. But that's just the beginning. The second level is Paramatma, which is the presence of the Supreme Being in the heart of all. In Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanavishto. Krishna tells Arjuna, please know that Hridi means from within the heart, that you were in my heart as I wish to be in your heart. And that physical presence of God in the heart of a being is known as the Paramatma, or Antaryami, witness from within. But even that is not yet complete realization of the Godhead. That comes on the stage of Bhagavan. In Brahman realization, there's the Sat factor, aware, fullness of knowledge. In Paramatma, there is the dimension of Chit, self-aware, but only in knowing Bhagavan do we have the Ananda feature revitalized. It requires knowledge of the personhood behind all of these energies to experience the ecstasies of devotion. There's no ecstasy in knowing the greatness of Brahman. There's no ecstasy in knowing the all-pervasiveness of the Supreme Being across his creation. But in knowing him personally, there's that joy, that Ananda. Here's a metaphor, if you like. If we're on a station platform and it's night, we see off in the distance this glaring effulgence, this light coming at us. And the impression would be, after all, that's what I'm getting here. I'm getting a light. If you wait long enough, you might find that that light is emanating from something with form, that behind the light, there's the source of the light. And the source of that light is with form, characteristics, distinctions. It is, however, only when you get to go on board the train that you begin to see that there is personality here. There are people. There's a sense of behavior, of interaction in moods of loving exchange, friendship, parental love, and so on. So that's similar to the three phases of realizing the Supreme Being. First is Brahman, this glaring effulgence that emanates from his body. And then little by little, as we deepen our meditation, we begin to see that there's form there. When finally we've surrendered ourselves at the feet of divinity, Radha Krishna, the deity, and so on. At that point, we understand that there is a personal source to all other energies and all other levels of God realization. That's the ultimate object of meditation. When we go into trance or into samadhi or into deep meditative state, the attention has to be focused on something. And the Bhakti tradition says, because the self is individual and the Supreme Being is individual, focus on that. Focus on the relationship between them. The challenge for other yoga practices, the mystic yoga system, is that there's a risk of thinking, when you've understood God in the heart, to say, aha, there I am. No, that is not you. That is compared in the Svetasvatara Upanishads to two green birds living on the same branch of a tree. They're living just close to each other, and the one supreme bird is doing its best to be friends with the small Jivatma bird. So that's the proper awareness of what happens in mystic yoga meditation. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. I thought it was important because in these sessions, as brief as they are, we try to touch on the basics, such as not the body, but the consciousness animating the body, the importance of behavioral guidelines, not just for good morality, but as the prerequisites to knowledge. And now in these final verses, where I was reminded of the critical foundational concept of God in three phases, three different levels of realization. There's the energy of God, which is all-pervading, which is accessible to all. There's the localized form of God as the Paramatma within the heart. That's that inner voice of wisdom. When you're trying to figure out what to do and you're not coming up with the answer, and if you go into a meditative place, and if your motives are sincere and your purpose is good, then you will receive that dictation from the Paramatma in the heart. You're never alone. in that sense. There is a palpable presence of Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, in the form of the witness within, Paramatma. That also pales in comparison with the third and ultimate stage of Bhagavan realization, Krishna in his personal form. So I wanted us to at least spend a little time reviewing that basic idea. Good. So we can open this up. Hi there.
Horrible.
Jackie.
How's it going? So my question, I always have a you talked about the Paramatma, the inner voice. How do we, or is there even a way to differentiate between your mind and then what that inner voice is?
Yeah.
Like, that's always been really tough for me to wrap on my mind around.
Well, you're asking the right question, and thank you. I was hoping someone would. How do we know that if we have this inner experience of communing with God in our heart, how do we know that that's not just sentimental? How do we know that isn't just some poetic expression, but it's not particularly grounded in anything? Well, we can't know that on our own. The previous verses have driven home for us the importance of having someone, a guide, a facilitator, a teacher, a guru, who can help the student distinguish between reality and illusion, distinguish between what is actually a dictate from within our hearts coming directly from God and what is wishful thinking or imagination or some end run around having to do the harder work and going straight to some goal we might prefer. So how do we know that that's not what's going on? That's the importance of good guidance in spiritual life. And in the absence of an initiating teacher, what we've been doing each evening for the past almost 3 weeks is called Sangha. And Sangha is arguably the most valuable resource in spiritual life. I would hope that those of you who have been so faithfully attending these evening gatherings, that you might get to know one another as well. It's one of the hard parts of doing this. There's not much chance, as there was, for example, when we had live gatherings at Jiva Mukti or elsewhere, to just kind of casually sit around and get to know one another and build that sense of community, that sense of Sangha. That's very important. And in the absence of a guru's physical presence, very often the inspiration, the encouragement, the clarification that we deserve and need will come from keeping a kind of circle such as this one. Thank you. Is it about Maya? Are they the same, Maya and effulgence? Not exactly, no. That Hiranya Patrina, that luminous light emanating from the body of God is real. That's not an illusion. It may not be the ultimate realization. It may not equate to realizing Bhagavan, but it's still real. The word Maya, in its most frequent context, means that which is not, mistaking something temporary as being permanent, mistakenly thinking that the me I've known throughout this lifetime, from when I was a child to who I am today, that's the real me. That's Maya. Another way of defining Maya is the principle of forgetfulness. We're kind of sleepwalking in this lifetime. And so Maya refers to that arbitrary temporal reality around us that we've accepted as the actual thing, as the real context. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So now it says, someone's asking, and then the steps toward Bhagavan, is that the same? Teacher, Sangha, more chanting, willingness, etc. How do we distinguish? Well, good question. There's no effort needed to achieve Brahman realization. You are already Brahman. Now you just have to start behaving that way. It's that simple. You are already an eternal spiritual being. So now begin behaving like that. In Paramatma, the means for achieving realization of Paramatma is usually very intense, the physical hatha meditational techniques. That's where we find the greatest number of descriptions of sages in the forest and great souls everywhere, realizing God in their heart through that deep meditation, which requires withdrawing from society, sitting on the proper materials. You know how you meditate in the forest? The yoga that's recommended in the Gita is that you leave society. No, you don't, show up for an hour class with a group of others. You leave the world. You find a very remote place where you sit down on kusha grass covered by a deerskin. You meditate on the tip of the nose, eyes half open and half closed, so they don't, if they're completely closed, you fall asleep. And if they're completely open, you're distracted by what's going on. So half closed, focusing on the tip of the nose, merging the outgoing breath with the incoming breath. You stop breathing. Not only are you not eating anymore, but now you're not breathing anymore. That's where Arjuna came in and said, I can't do this. It's not for me. But that mystic meditation has as its goal the realization of Paramatma. Bhagavan, to know Bhagavan Sri Krishna is actually easiest of all. He's looking for our love. He's looking to engage in a relationship with us. And he gives a hint in the Gita, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachate. If one offers me patra, a leaf, a flower, phala is a fruit, a leaf, a flower, fruit, or some water, and if it's offered with devotion, I will be so happy to accept that. So realizing Bhagavan does not require a deep scholarship. It doesn't require years of strenuous mystic meditation. It's at that point where we say, okay, just as the speaker of Isopanishad, please remove your glaring effulgence. Let me see that beautiful face of yours. That quality is called lolyam, L-A-U-L-Y-A-M, lolyam. Lolyam means a deep yearning, a heartfelt plea. Please show me your face. Let me engage in your service. So those are the three paths, if you will, to those different stages of God realization. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made it easy. Just chant Hare Krishna, follow a clean lifestyle, keep good company. And I remember my god sister Giada Rani, who painted the beautiful painting on the cover of this book here, asking our teacher Prabhupada one time, she said, when I'm painting, I'm not always thinking about Krishna. I'm thinking about what color to get by, and what do I have to mix in these tubes of ink, and so the composition, and what am I going to do next? And she says, I'm not thinking about Krishna, I'm thinking about the work. And Prabhupada just described for her, yes, but the work that you're doing as a service, as an act of devotion. Even if you die thinking not about Krishna, but about the work that you were doing, if that work was being undertaken as an offering of love, of devotion, Krishna will force his way into your mind at the moment of death. Prabhupada was emphatic. He will force his way into your mind. So you need not worry that somehow, as the speaker of Isopanishad worries, please don't forget me, show me the proper path, let me see. There's no need for that anxiety. As Paramatma, Krishna knows our innermost thoughts and yearnings and desires. That is covering Nice to know that our spiritual success doesn't depend just on our petty skills and half-hearted efforts. That this is, it's a team effort, if you will. And Bhagavan Sri Krishna is on our team, and he's cheering us on. He's rooting us on. And even if our effort is imperfect, incomplete, not particularly well scheduled or regulated, Krishna doesn't see what we're not doing. He sees what we are doing. And even a small gesture of love is sufficient for unleashing all kinds of wonderful, magical energies. And the realizations begin to accumulate one on top of the other. I did at one point earlier today, while waiting to see if there are other questions, make a kind of connecting of the dots. I was wondering, is there a correlation between this prayer to see God's face, to actually know God face to face, and what's happening around us? And of course, I try not to get too political or turn this into a topic in the news half hour, but I think there is an important correlation in that what we're training to be able to do in these sessions and in our bhakti practices and so on is to see more closely into the world around us and find Krishna there, find Krishna in the details of the world around us. I was on a morning walk with, excuse me, with Prabhupada in London. This was obviously the early 70s. And at the time I was president of the Krishna temple in Paris. And on this walk, I had a question. It was a serious question to ask him. I said, Srila Prabhupada, many of the young people in our temple in Paris seem uncomfortable because they don't know what their relationship is with you. You're not visiting Paris that often. You're always so busy with such extraordinary devotional service all over the world. So what do you advise me to tell people who don't know what their relationship is with you because they don't get to spend time with you? And he threw it back in my court. He says, well, what do you tell them? And I said, well, you shouldn't feel bad because Prabhupada has invested himself in his books. If you read his books, you will learn about him. You'll feel that you're in his company. At least that's been my experience. And then Prabhupada sort of nodded, that's okay. And then he said, you should first ask them, are they chanting 16 rounds on their beads every day? Now, the significance of that question, of course, is that 16 times round on the japa set, which may equate to an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half each day, somewhere in that area, is foundational bhakti practice. That's not just a nice to do, that's a must do. And if now, because we're all beginners, we can only do 4 rounds a day, 10 minutes or 15 minutes of japa instead of the entire hour and a half, well, that's fine too. Prabhupada's point was, though, don't ask about going deeper, having higher realizations of God, if you're not yet able to follow the basics. You don't get to perform an operation on someone just because you're enthusiastic to do so. You've got to go through medical school. You've got to go through your, what's it called, a residency. You've got to train properly all along the way. So that was an important point, I thought. Well, any last minute questions? Here's one. Do we have to chant loudly or can we chant in our mind? Well, we know from one of our previous sessions that in 12th Canto Bhagavatam, it says that the mind is one of the elements in which Krishna will agree to appear He will appear as the deity in our mind if we call upon him sincerely. The challenge, however, with mental japa is that you don't have the sound to focus on. You're not hearing the sound. And the tendency for the mind, given an open space, is for it to work mischief. So there's every chance that in silent meditation, you're going to have a hard time controlling the vacillation of the mind. And chanting out loud, doing japa just loud enough so that you can hear yourself chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That does several things. It engages your tongue, it engages your ears, it engages your mind because you're hearing these things. It's engaging the sense of touch with the japa beads. So all of these different functions, all of these sensory engagements are present in the outward chanting of the mantra. But still, both are good. However you can chant, quietly in your mind or out loud with your beads. Chant, 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 chant. Always chant, always chant. Prabhupada said that in a class one time, I think it was in Geneva. He said, so you're speaking with a very educated person who is very skeptical, and you just say, my dear sir, please chant, 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 chant. And he replies, can't, 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 can't. So rather than taking on more than we can handle, if it's only 5 minutes a day, do that with sincerity. And Krishna's effulgence will part, and you will see your beloved Sri Krishna face to face one day. Do not have any doubt about that. Please join me in the Vaishnav Pranam. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So just again, a reminder, tomorrow evening is our last session. It's about 3 weeks, I think, that we've been doing this. And it is a joy and a pleasure to be with you like this for the past several weeks. We'll be starting May 5th, a Zoom series in partnership with Funky Om Yoga Studio out here on Long Island. So don't despair, we'll get each other's company again in the near future. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Chant sincerely from your heart, and I'll hope to see you again tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Joshua.
Thank you, Julie.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Haribol, Mount
Thank you. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Haribol. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Andrea.